Hi, this is Danny Doyle, and I am here with a Fire Emblem Fates Revelations Corrin's Talent tier list. That is a mouthful. But basically, I will be tiering during character creation. You can select a talent that will be the heart seal for your avatar, and I'll be tiering that for how good I think each talent is in the Fates Revelation route. Corrin is always going to be a very strong unit. There's not really any way to screw your Corrin up. So even the, talents that I put in the lower tiers, if you want to do like a silly build that requires them, feel free to do it. You're not going to get soft locked at Anankos just because you chose Oni Savage and it turns out I don't like that or whatever. But this is just a general idea for anyone who doesn't really know what they want to make their Corrin talent. Or just if you want to hear my thoughts, because, I'll just be rambling about my thoughts. Real quick, before we start, if you can hear noise in the background, I do have my air conditioner running. I usually keep it off during recording sessions, but it's like 80 degrees right now, and this is just a quick little tier list that I'm pumping out while working on larger videos, so I didn't want to torture myself to death. But yeah, the criteria for this, I'm judging the talents on 3 grounds. The first, and probably most impactful, is how good the class is itself. If it's like a class that I consider bad, it's probably going to end up low, whereas if it's a class that I think is very useful, it's probably going to end up pretty high. The second one, however, is how easy Corrin can get the class without it being their talent. In Fates, you can reclass based on supports. Every character in Fates can either get a new class through marriage or friendship. The Corrin sexuals unfortunately don't get friendships, except for Flora, and I guess Fuga also, but Diviner Fuga, lol. But if whoever you marry, you can use a partner seal to reclass into their base class. So if you marry Camilla, you can reclass into Wyvern. If you marry Odin, you can reclass into Dark Mage, etc., etc. And then, whoever you get an A+ support, you can use a friendship seal. But Corrin is unique because they don't get A+. Instead, they can just use a friendship seal to reclass to any character who they get an A support with. So Corrin can potentially get a bunch of different classes, whereas other units are limited to just 2 in addition to their base kit. So, with that being said, there are certain classes that, say you really wanted Troubadour, well, whether you're male or female, you get access to an early servant that you can marry, and therefore it's not super difficult to get Troubadour. I guess that's kind of a bad example because marriage is a pretty big commitment, not only in real life but also in the game. But, Sky Knight. If you are a female Corrin, you can friendship with Azura very, very quickly, because Azura has perfect availability in this game, and a fast support with Corrin, and then you'll get Sky Knight. Whereas male Corrin has to wait until Tsubaki, who joins later, and also isn't a fast support. So if male Corrin wants Sky Knight, it's still easier for male Corrin to get via friendship than something like Dark Mage, where the first one is Odin and Leo joining side by side. But it is definitely harder than female Corrin. So I will be factoring in how difficult it is to, or how easy it is to get the class through a friendship or through a marriage, and noting whether one gender is favored as opposed to the other. Funny enough, usually female Corrin is favored. I think Ninja is the only one where male Corrin is favored because Kaze joins earlier than Oboro, but, or not Oboro, Kagura. I was looking at the spear fighter icon, and so just Oboro jumped into my head. But yeah, Kagura is the only friendship option for female Corrin to get in Ninja. But for everything else, usually the female variant joins before the male one, which is a little bit unfortunate for male Corrin, although male Corrin does get Ninja and does have, marriage options if you want to give people stuff or whatever. But that brings us to the third factor that I will be judging these classes on, and that is how desirable it is to give to someone else through marriage, because Corrin marriage can unlock a bunch of new classes that people don't normally get access to. For example, Sakura is held back by the fact that she cannot access Archer. The only male Archer in the game is Takumi, and she can't marry her brother, and she doesn't have friendship with Setsuna or Mozu. So if you want to make Sakura into like a shining bow archer, Corrin Marriage can deliver that. Wyvern is another really big one. The only Gen 1 Wyverns are female, so unless you have a friendship with Baruka or Camilla, the female units cannot reclass to Wyvern. A lot of people like Wyvern Effie in Conquest, and you do have to do a Corrin Marriage for that. But even if it is a class that people can access, like, you know, Ninja or Archer or whatever, there is benefit to just passing it to an extra person, especially if it's a really valuable class that you want multiple of. Or if it's a class that comes super late, like Dark Mage. I mentioned Odin and Leo are the first male Dark Mages. Well, that kind of leaves Felicia out of the Dark Mage class unless you have Corrin pass it her. So that is something that I will be factoring in as well. And yeah, I think that I'm not really going to factor in Kana because Kana gets Corrin's talent also as her Heart Seal class, but Kana kind of stinky doo-doo unit, and also it's kind of just the same thing as Corrin, where it's like, oh, well, you know, if you pass a good class to this person, if it's a class that Corrin wants, it's probably also a class that Kana wants, because then it's just a good class. But let's dive in with the first one on our list, Apothecary. Apothecary is a bow class. It can promote to either Mechanist or Merchant. It gets some tonic-related stuff. It has Potent Potion and Quicksalve. Potent Potion just gives all healing items and tonics 50% boost, so a tonic wouldn't boost you by 2 stats, instead it boosts you by 3, and a healing item recovers 15 HP for a Vulnerary instead of 10, and then Quicksalve lets you basically use an item as a free action. This is really only useful for Vulneraries, although in PvP, it does help you to get like some tonics off as a free action, but if you want a tonic in single player, like you're just gonna want to use it in the preps menu for the most part. But yeah, Apothecary, kind of cool kit, very rare class, so if you want an Apothecary on your team, Corrin talent is one of the few ways to get it, because I know, so Obero has it as a reclass. I don't know why I moved over to Spearfighter. I mean, it's because they used Obero for Spearfighter, but like honestly, this, it makes sense. Like she is the iconic Spearfighter. But yeah, Midori and Oboro and Azama, and then, you know, their kids obviously will get it from them as well. I think are the only, well, okay, so Mitama, but that's Azama's kid. I think that's all 4 possible Apothecaries. I might be missing one, but it is a class that nobody starts in it other than Midori, and it's a very rare Heart Seal class. I don't really see a good, like, point to it, though. It's sort of a defensively focused bow class, which is not really where you want to be as a bow class. It's pretty slow as well in comparison to the other bow classes. Bows are arguably the best weapon in Fate's Revelation, but the main thing, and the reason I put Archer and Outlaw right next to Apothecary, is there are other better bow classes, and by giving Corrin Apothecary, you are sort of taking away the option to get these classes as the talent. The only thing I can really think of is, if you care about money, you could marry the early servant to get an early access to Profiteer. I know a lot of people really like Profiteer, but like, I don't think Profiteer is particularly good. Money is pretty tight in Rev, but the money you get from Profiteer is like outclassed by just going to Lilith's Shrine. And when I say money is tight, I think really only in the mid-game. Once you get past, like, Chapter 19, you can sell a ton of stuff and make a ton of money, and then, so it's really only early game, which is why Jacob and Felicia just getting it earlier would be, I guess, the upside to Apothecary. I don't think that is worth, not only are you spending a Corrin talent, but also a Corrin marriage, because Corrin themselves is not going to get to Apothecary super quickly. I think purely because it is a rather rare class, so if you have a build that really wants, like, Spendthrift, or I guess you could also get early Replicate on Jacob and Felicia, but like if you're doing that, there's another talent that does that much better. I'm gonna put Apothecary in C tier just because it's really rare, and so if you want Apothecary, which I don't think you really do, but if you want Apothecary, Corrin talent is kind of the best way to get it. It just sort of, I don't care for it as a class, other than like if I'm trying to build bow rank on Oboro. If you're, I think as a reclass for Oboro or Osama, it is good, but as a Corrin talent, not really, and that's mostly because Corrin has access to better bow classes. And that's why I put them up at the top instead of doing this alphabetically, although it's thrown off alphabetically by the fact that they label Samurai as Myrmidon and Sky Knight as Pegasus Rider. I get that that's like the traditional name for that, so I can't be too annoyed, but it is kind of funny. And also Monk wasn't here. Monk and Shrine Maiden just absent, so I had to pick Bishop. It's weird because this tier list pins itself as a Fates classes tier list, but it's just missing some of the Fates classes. It has the DLC ones, that's kind of cool, but Archer though, Archer. I think Archer is one of the best Heart Seal options you can give Corrin. I think probably S tier. The only thing that potentially holds it back, which is why I'm like kind of hesitant about putting it in S tier, is female Corrin can get it very, very quickly from Mozu. And male Corrin can get it almost as fast from Takumi because it's a fast friendship. Mozu shows up, I mean, technically you can get Mozu as early as Chapter 8, but I like to get her right before Chapter 9. Takumi shows up right before Chapter 11. So there's a 2-chapter difference, but it's really only a 1-map difference because Takumi's a fast friendship. So you can build his support with male Corrin in one less map than it would take Mozu. Either way, you can get access to Archer fairly quickly. Archer comes with very good skills. Quick Draw is, you know, the sort of the premier one, but Certain Blow, if you go Sniper, is a very, very good skill. Air Superiority, not super nice. It's niche. Like, against Flyers, it's good. There's just not that many Flyers. Bow Fair, obviously, +5 damage with bows is always going to be good. And just having bow access in a high-strength class with access to Kinshi Knight, which is flying bow lance class, just phenomenal. There's a lot of maps that you want to be flying on in Rev. Being able to just immediately Heart Seal to Archer with Corrin is also really valuable, and I think that is sort of the upside over just getting the Mozu friendship, getting the Takumi friendship, is you can have Corrin as an Archer as early as you want. I do think that if you go Heart Seal Corrin, or if you go Archer Corrin as the talent, the early reclass probably isn't great. I've done a playthrough where I reclassed Corrin as early as Chapter 8 because you need to be able to purchase both a weapon shop and a staff shop because you don't get a bronze bow by default. So if you reclass Corrin for Chapter 7, you're kind of just fucked because you can't do combat with your best combat unit. But I've done Archer Corrin as early as 8, and it does make 8, which is otherwise kind of a trivial map, a lot more difficult, especially the first few turns, just not having access to enemy phasing with Corrin, because there's no 2-range enemies that Corrin can sort of enemy phase. It makes Corrin frailer as well, and you're stuck on the bronze weapons instead of like using the Yato or the Dragonstone or, you know, whatever else you've got lying around for various reclasses. And I do generally like reclassing Corrin early over reclassing Corrin late, especially if I want to pick up some good skills. So that's why I tend to favor classes with either sword or lance access, because you have a bronze lance on Azura, and you have a the Yato, obviously, Corrin can use in any sword class. But I think Archer is good enough that, especially with handing it over to other people, any male can access Archer because Mozu is able to support both Hoshidans and Norians, but any females? The only females that can access Archer, because Takumi's the only male Archer, are the Hoshidans, aside from Sakura, and then the Royals. Camilla can get Archer, and Elise, if you want to go Archer, Elise can get Archer. But, so, like, if you want to pass Archer onto one of the Norians, that is, you know, the way that you do it. I guess also Effie, because she can friendship Mozu, but yada yada. You know what I mean. And then, even just giving Archer to an extra Hoshidan, like if you're not using any of the Norians, say Mozu marries someone, Takumi marries someone, but there's a third person you also want Archer. Archer's just a very, very good class. And so, yeah, I think the fact that it's good on Corrin and then it's good on... I can't really think of anyone except for like maybe Benny or like Rinka, you know, defensively focused units. Even mages, like the Shining Bow, obviously you'd have to use the arm scroll to get there, but the Shining Bow is a legit good weapon. It's just expensive or it comes late. So even mages like don't hate Archer. I think honestly, Archer's probably better than Outlaw for them, even with the lower magics, just because the class access like Kinchi good. But yeah, Archer, very, very good class. Outlaw, I think, is also kind of an underrated talent. I think I'm probably going to put it in A tier. I do think if you aren't looking to give Archer to someone else and you are willing to wait on the friendships for Corrin to get them, I think Outlaw is probably a better choice than Archer for Corrin specifically. But I do think that passing Outlaw to people who don't have it is less valuable than passing Archer to people who don't have it. Outlaw is able to promote to either Bow Knight or Adventurer, which means Bow Knight because you don't want Adventurer. Staff access just not really worth it on a combat unit. But Bow Knight's a pretty good class. Bow Knight has a horse. So in the late game, after flight utility has stopped, when you go to all the indoor maps and there's no more flight utility, Bow Knight is just better than Kinchi because it has better stats, it still has the movement, and it doesn't take effective damage from bows, which is cool. Because Pegs also take effective damage from, like, beast effectiveness, so you can't even be like, oh, but now it has a different effectiveness. Nope. Pegs also get beast slayered, so, like, Bow Knight and Peg both dealing with that. Although there's, like, no beast slayers in Rev as well. So, like, that would, I think, exclusively be for Paralogs. But regardless... bow access and sword access. On Corrin specifically, the sword access is nice because I do like having access to at least one class where I can use the Yato, if for no other reason, because it makes fighting Anankos easier, just because it pierces the dragon skin. So that's cool. Outlaw itself gives +1 movement, and Lock Touch, which is... not the greatest skill out there. It's one of those skills where, like, you want a Lock Touch user on your team, but then there's diminishing returns. Just because there's so much good stuff in chests, you're probably running, like, a Ninja or a Bow Knight who has Lock Touch. Because, like, Shura has it by default, Kaze has it by default, Saizo has it by default. And then, like, anyone who reclasses to Ninja gets it, anyone who reclasses to Outlaw gets it. But it's nice to have it for, like... Corrin is always going to be deployed. Corrin probably has 5 skills better than Lock Touch, but if you don't, like, yeah, you know, just throw it on Corrin. I think the move +1 is sort of the big appeal to Outlaw, because you can get Bow Knight through Mercenary, and Mercenary is also a pretty high-value Heart Seal class, but I really like having access to move +1, especially if you're doing, like, a bow-focused Corrin build. Then Corrin can get move +1 through Outlaw, and then pursue friendship with either Mozu or Takumi, and turn into a 9-move Kinchi Knight, which is really, really nice. And that whole time in Outlaw, you're also building bow rank, so normally you just want to be using Forged Bronzes for, like, your day-to-day combat, but there is value, especially in Rev, in using the non-bronze weapons. The game gives you quite a few for free. Like, you just get given a lot of free weapons in the Iron and Steel tier, and it can, if you're like really money crunching, we talked about this with Apothecary, the mid game is pretty money crunchy. If you're really money crunching and you don't have the money to like buy and forge up good bronzes, you could potentially just like use an iron, use a steel, especially if you have like the speed to offset steel or whatever. They are typically worse than just a forged bronze. And then if you go magical Corrin, like obviously the bow rank is good for shining bow, but I think that the weapon rank is nice beyond just the weapon rank bonuses, and being able to build that up before you finish the friendship chain and get archer is cool. Being able to get move +1 is cool. Yeah, I guess you could also like dip into adventurer specifically for Lucky 7, although I think if you're ultimately going to end up with archer, that's kind of unnecessary because Certain Blow comes from Sniper, and I don't think there's a single unit in the game who really needs more than one accuracy boosting skill, unless you're like fighting at weapon triangle disadvantage against really dodgy Duelist Blow Swordmasters or something. I think Lucky 7 is enough on its own, or Certain Blow is enough on its own. And in a bow class, you are doing a lot of player phasing, so Certain Blow being player phase only also is hardly a downside. Alright, next up is Cavalier, and this is possibly my most controversial take. But I think Cavalier is an S-tier Corrin talent. Oh, the formatting's a little off. Let me just, whoop, there we go. Now his head's not cut in half. I think Cavalier's an S-tier Corrin talent, though. So, obviously, it's not a spectacular class. I don't think it's a class that you really want to end up in long term. Although Great Knight is, I think, tied with Hoshido Noble, or maybe one strength short of Hoshido Noble, when it comes to raw Yato damage against Anankos. And it has to do with the sword rank caps and the strength modifiers and yada yada yada. But in general, I don't think the Cavalier line offers much that you want to stay in long term. If you don't have other options, like if you're running Xander, Parry, or Silas before you've completed support chains, it's not terrible, but it's never ideal, and Corrin always has other options. The main reason that I think it's valuable is Cavalier in particular offers some very good some very good skills, class skills. And I do mean Cavalier specifically because, I mean, Defender is a fine filler skill, but I think it's probably one of the more overrated skills in the game. Shelter and Elbow Room are phenomenal, though. So, Elbow Room is basically a free +3 damage modifier that you get immediately, because there's very little terrain in Rev. Sometimes you'll be like, in Chapter 18, there's some forests, and you might be on a fort in one map or another, but usually you're on open terrain. So usually Elbow Room is just a free +3 damage boost, that you can carry over into other classes. Shelter, on the other hand, I think it's really, really useful whether you're playing at a more sort of casual, low skill ceiling gameplay where you're just using it to like rescue people out of danger, or to help in positioning. If you're like having multiple people team up to beat a single enemy, Shelter can get someone out of the way to let another person attack. But then obviously on the on a high skill ceiling, Shelter Singing is a very powerful tool, which basically allows you to make use of the Shelter command in order to give Azura multiple dance actions in a single turn. It's a little bit, so it's not very action efficient because it takes 2 persons action to give 1 dance, because you have to shelter and then you have to take dancer. So it is negative to your action economy. But when you've got incredibly broken units like Camilla, Reyna, Corrin themselves, sometimes being able to like trade 2 units actions for an extra Camilla is fucking worth it. And so Cavalier giving you both Elbow Room and Shelter is a huge boon. And you don't get access to a Cavalier friendship for a long time. Both Silas and Parry and Xander joined very late, so male Corrin does have the advantage in Silas joining earlier. I think it's two maps before Perry does. But honestly, I think pursuing a friendship to get Cavalier from either Silas, Perry, or Xander is just not worth it. They show up so late that, like, by the time you get Cavalier, Cavalier is not a very good mid-game class. I'm not going to dip in just to get Elbow Room there. So if you want Elbow Room on Corrin, or on another unit who Corrin marries, you kind of want to give, like, you kind of want to get it as your talent. Because you can't support Gunter. And, I mean, honestly, even if you just want a Shelterer, Gunter and reclassed Jacob for female Corrin are the only options. So having another one on Corrin or Corrin's spells, or Kana, is good. And then just getting Elbow Room enables Corrin to sort of play the role of the Jagan. I've talked about before, my typical ideal path for Corrin is get Cavalier talent, immediately reclass, because you can use the Yato and the Bronze Lance to start building Lance rank. Get the Elbow Room and Shelter skills, and then complete the Azura friendship, and reclass to Sky Knight or Falco Knight in time for Chapter 9. Where you can just pretty easily delete Fuga, especially if you trained up your Lance rank. The Killer Lance is, since you get it for free, so you don't have to buy and forge up a better Lance. The Killer Lance with Elbow Room, and I think it's Fierce Partner. Corrin on average is going to be able to one-round Fuga without a crit, which is kind of ridiculous. But even if you're not going for specifically that, just like getting Elbow Room on an Archer Corrin, Archer to Kinji Corrin, or even a Magical Corrin, like as long as you don't go minus strength for your talent, early game, if you're going Magical Corrin, they can reclass to Cavalier for a couple of levels, get Elbow Room and Shelter, and then I guess it would have to be Basara because you're giving up Dark Mage, because you have to wait for Nyx in order to get it. But you could go Basara, or you could use a magical weapon. Like, hey, you get a free Levin sword, like, reclass into, like, Swordmaster or something, class with a magic base, and use the Levin sword Swordmaster with Elbow Room. It can work. Although I do think if you're going Magical Corrin, you probably want Dark Mage as your talent, mostly for Corrin's benefit, because Dark Mage is the best magical class. You can use Nosferatu in it, but that's not really a huge deal. I do think, like, early game rev, Nos tanking with Corrin is, like, viable, but I also think if you're just trying to do that, like, Dragonstone tanking is probably better. The big thing is that Sorcerer has, I think, the highest magic modifier. It can get S-rank tomes as well, which one of the few good S-ranks is the S-rank tome. You get it in the Burning Forest map in Vala. And you get Dark Knight out of this, you get Heartseeker out of this. Without Corrin talent, your first Heartseeker unit is Nyx. And Heartseeker, it gives adjacent enemies minus 20 avoid, so it is huge for dealing with the accuracy issues. I mean, fuck, Fuga is an incredibly annoying to fight boss in Chapter 9 because he's on a throne, but you don't have any of the accuracy boosting, like, tools yet. And so being able to reclass Corrin into Dark Mage, even if you're not using Corrin as your boss killer, just getting Heartseeker in order to reduce Fuga's avoid and have someone else deal the killing blow is super, super useful. Also worth noting that Felicia and Hayato really benefit from Dark Mage Corrin marriage. Hayato can get it from Nyx, but he doesn't, like, super want to wait, and then also you're fielding Nyx for 7 maps at that point, so, like, it's not ideal. So I think Felicia's probably, like, because she has to wait super long for Flora, Felicia's probably the better one to, like, benefit from getting Sorcerer, but Sorcerer Hayato is also nice. That's not the only class that the two of them can benefit from. Wyvern from Corrin Marriage is obviously going to give you access to Malignite, and that is cool. But yeah, I think if you're going Magical Corrin, if you want to do Magical Corrin and you are picking a talent other than Dark Mage, you have to have something very specific in mind. Like, oh, I want to start raising my Lance rank because I'm doing a Bolt Naginata build or something. For the most part, it feels like throwing. And throwing can be fun. I've done, like, Oni Savage talent on Corrin before, which is silly, but in general, I don't think Dark Mage is, or I don't think there's a better magical class to give Corrin than Dark Mage. And that's part of why I would rank Diviner so low. I think, honestly, probably D tier. The early game magical units, is Diviner an F tier talent? I don't think it is. Diviner gives you magic +2, and you can get access to Rally Magic and Tome Fair, which are good skills. The problem is, like, so Magical Corrin can just get Diviner via either Hayato Friendship if you're male, or Orochi Friendship if you're female. Hayato Friendship comes 1 chapter sooner, because he joins in chapter 10, Orochi joins in chapter 11. So that's another W for male Corrin. But in general, like, the only reason to really dip into Omnioji is to grab Tome Fair. And the only reason to really dip into Basara is either you don't have access to a better magical class, or you want Kizotic. Which, Kizodic's good. Like, extra hit, I'll always take extra hit, but that's really it. That's really all it gives you. Ooh, Rend Heaven. Magic +2 from Diviner. Yeah, and the benefit of, like, oh, well, you can, like, immediately reclass and start building Tome rank as early as, like, chapter 8 or something. Well, if you want that, just do Dark Mage, right? Like, Diviner's not even a good class to give to people, because, like, who wants it? Nyx, Odin, and Leo? Well, Leo can get it from Sakura. I mean, not Diviner, but he gets Omnioji, which is what he would want, like Tome Fair. Nyx gets it from Orochi Friendship. Hayato, or Hayato Marriage. Yeah, Nyx can get it from either. And then Odin, I guess Odin kind of likes getting Diviner, like Tome Fair from Corrin, but, like, it's also Odin. Are you really using Odin in Rev? This might actually be an F tier talent. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. It feels like just strictly worse than Dark Mage, and it feels like they fill similar roles, which is why it's weird to have them so distinct from each other. But Dark Mage, all the magical units want Dark Mage. None of the magical units want Diviner because they already have it. Like, Sakura obviously doesn't already have it, but she has Omnioji, and I guess you can do parallel class shenanigans. Diviner's parallel class is Dark Mage. So, like, Hayato and Orochi get Dark Mage because of parallel class shenanigans from marrying Corrin. And I guess that is probably enough to pull it from F to D, because, like, at least you haven't given up your opportunity to give Dark Mage to people, but, like, those are the people that already get Dark Mage through other marriages, and, like, you gave it up for Felicia, and it's just, I don't know, it feels bad. It feels bad. Does early Tome Fair Felicia, like, make up for Dark Mage? Maybe? Because then she can get Dark Mage through Flora Friendship in the late game. What the fuck? Oh my god. Yeah, this feels pretty bad. Fighter, on the other hand, kind of doesn't. So the first fighter you would natively get access to is you can reclass Baruka or Keaton. Baruka's faster because you can reclass her in preps, whereas Keaton you'd have to do turn 1 in chapter 13. And then you get Arthur and Charlotte in chapter 14 if you don't want to spend a seal. And Fighter's like a good backpack class. It gives good strength bonuses. If you go Berserker, it gives even better strength and speed bonuses, and you can get rally strength and stuff. As far as for Corrin, not the worst option if you're going for, like, rally bot Corrin, and you don't want to, like, bother friendshipping Arthur or Keaton or Charlotte. I'm gonna go with B tier. I think, like, so it's not a great early game reclass. You do get a free Bronze Club in chapter 9 on Rinka. But, like, I don't think it's phenomenal. I also don't think turning Corrin into a fighter backpack early on is super worthwhile, and I can't really think of a unit that really wants it. I guess if you go male Corrin, marry Rinka, she can go Berserker, do the crit build, because she gets Savage Blow from Oni Chieftain, and then she gets the crit bonus from Berserker, go Great Club. I talked about it in the Rinka video. I don't think it's like great for her, because she's kind of got a noodle arm, and she wants to be more defensive anyway. And no one else really wants Fighter, because even if you want, like, hero skills for a Soul Ninja, I guess HP plus 5 is pretty cool, but I tend to prefer Strong Riposte. And Berserker doesn't really... Like, Berserker's a utility class. I don't really think of it as, like, super high value. I don't like it as a combat class at all. The minus crit avoid just makes me sad. Knight's pretty bad. Knight is definitely D tier. I think it's probably worse than Diviner. I don't think it's like an F tier reclass, because you do still have the option to like build Lance rank. You get like what, defense plus 2. It might be an F tier actually. So if you like reclass Corrin early, like, what is Knight offering you? You can go Great Knight and just not have the Cavalier skills. You have General if you want General backpack. You can give Rinka Knight if you don't want to use Benny, but, like, Benny's pretty awesome. So, like, I don't know. Knight, yeah, I think Knight's an F tier Heartsteel option. The more I think about it, like, because you can build Lance rank in Chapter 8, but then why aren't you just going Cavalier for that? Yeah, I don't know. Not super sold on this one. Armor Knight, bad. Movement, moment. I think Mercenary's probably A tier? So, Mercenary having sword access means you can immediately reclass Corrin in Chapter 7 and start building up the skills. You can get Strong Riposte, which is 3 extra damage on enemy phase, and I guess Good Fortune like doesn't really do anything. But Strong Riposte is cool, especially if you're going on like a more enemy phase oriented Corrin. Think like a ninja, think like, I mean, that's sort of the big one, because if you're going a bow Corrin, you're not really super enemy phase oriented. Even just like, a Wyvern, if you're like marrying Camilla or friendshipping Camilla or something. Like Wyvern Corrin can do some cool enemy phase stuff. Yeah, I think Mercenary offers good stuff in that regard. It gives you Bow Knight access if you just want to promote and do sort of like the Jagan Corrin thing. You can also get early hero, and it gives Corrin a pretty fast track to Soul Ninja. I don't think Corrin is like the best Soul Ninja, but for the mid game, like he's gonna be one of the fastest ones, and that's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, Mercenary is just like an all-around nice class. It doesn't really offer anything super unique. Like, if you want Bow Knight, I'd usually rather Outlaw. Although, there is, like, some value to, like, Strong Riposte Bow Knight. I think the move plus 1 is just better. Because I've mentioned that, like, bow classes are usually doing more stuff on player phase. They're more player phase oriented. But there are maps where you can set up to do, like, big bow enemy phases. The big one I think of is, like, the red and blue tiles map. There's like a lot of over wall combat, but Asuji's paralog, the over door combat, like there's situations where it comes up. Even just like without tons of terrain, having a sort of like, I wait at the edge of this person's range and like counter them with my bow or whatever is cool. But generally I prefer being able to build bow rank, being able to get the move plus 1. Mercenaries, maybe it's B tier. The more I talk about it, the more down I am on it. I think it's probably a B tier. It's right above Fighter. The two hero classes standing together. It is also a very late class, because Selena and Laszlo are the two. So, like, it joins at the same time. Like, if you don't get talent and you want Mercenary class skills, it's the same time as Fighter, like with Baruka and whatnot. I think probably B tier is probably fine for it. Right above Fighter, yeah. As for Samurai, Samurai kind of feels like it's similar to Mercenary in that you can immediately reclass and start getting skills. You can get Vantage, which is cool, but I don't necessarily think Corrin does much with, like, Vantage builds. If you want access to a Samurai or some of the Samurai skills or whatever, also, it's relatively simple to get Samurai Friendship, because both Hana and Hinata join pretty early. I question why you would want it. Like, a Vantage Corrin build, Corrin's usually not going to be damage stacking enough to one-shot things. I guess if you're doing, like, Soul Ninja Corrin, Vantage can be a nice skill, but in that case, like, I think you'd almost always prefer going Mercenary to get Soul sooner, and you can get Vantage from, like, a Hana or Hinata friendship or marriage. Yeah, the only, like, unit that really wants to be a Swordmaster as well are Xander and Ryoma, because they have special swords. I think this is probably, like, a D tier, better than Diviner, but you have access to it so easily. No one really wants access to it themselves, and it doesn't really offer you anything. Like, I guess Master of Arms, but, like, what is Master of Arms doing for you, right? Like, I don't know. This is just not. It's not a very good talent to give Corrin. It's one of the more available classes in the game, and Corrin doesn't really benefit from it at all. On the other hand, Ninja is one of the more available classes in the game, but Corrin does benefit from it quite a bit. I think Ninja's probably an A tier Heartseal option. Being able to immediately go into Ninja without having to build up like Kaze, Saizo, or Kagero friendship is pretty nice. You do have to wait again until chapter 8 so you can afford shurikens or whatever. But if you have a bulkier Corrin, then, or even just like with Gunter pair up, Corrin gets pretty bulky, right? So you can kind of enemy phase with shurikens, which is nice. The debuffs aren't super relevant if Corrin's doing combat, because Corrin's actually pretty good at killing stuff, as opposed to like Jacob, Felicia, and Kaze, who the debuffs are relevant for. But it is, early game, it is super good to be able to debuff enemies in Rev specifically, because like Birthright and Conquest, the debuffs are kind of a meme. But in Rev, the enemy quality on Rev Lunatic is high enough that, like, you want to debuff people. You want to be chipping away at them with, like, 3 or 4 units, which is pretty cool. You get Lock Touch. I think it's probably worse than Outlaw just because it is so available, whereas Outlaw isn't. Like, you get Niles or Bust, because Nina is also required from Niles. Oh, there's Shura. There's Shura. Male Corrin can friendship Shura. And if you want to marry Shura, you can get it. But, like, if you're marrying Shura, you probably took Archer anyway. But yeah, Lock Touch is nice. Dagger Access is nice. Like, Ninja's the best dagger class. Also worth noting, if you're going for a Ninja Corrin, Master Ninja can still use Yato. So you don't have to, like, reclass for the final map if you want to use Yato. And that's pretty cool. I think Ninja is one of the better classes to pick as your talent, but I do penalize it a little bit for the fact that it is so easily accessible. If you're not super good at, like, support management, I can definitely see it being above Outlaw, probably not up to S tier. I do think Cavalier, Dark Mage, and Archer, well, so if you're bad at support management, Cavalier's not great, because you just don't get another class then. But I also don't think support management is particularly difficult. Yeah, Ninja's a good class to end up in. It's just not, like, hard to access, is I think the biggest thing that penalizes it. Oni Savage. Oni Savage is the rarest class in the game. Ringa is the only unit that can give it to anyone. And Hinata and his son, Hisame, are the only other units that natively start with it. Oh, and Fuga. Fuga has it. But it's also just bad. Like, I'm gonna put it above Knight, but I think it's still an F tier. I was tempted to put it in D, but I think it's still an F tier. It's just not a very good class. It's a defensively oriented axe class, so it's kind of like the Hoshinan equivalent to Armor Knight. But I am tempted to put it under, actually, because again, like I said, with Knight, they can still build Lance rank. But I think the rarity, like if you want to do something silly in terms of giving Savage Blow to someone, having Corrin marry them is a way to do it. Like the crit builds, I don't like the crit builds, but the crit builds do kind of require Oni Savage because it has the only crit boosting skill in the game, aside from DLC. One of the tragedies of Selena is that she doesn't have any support partners that get the crit build or want to do the crit build. So I guess you could have Corrin marry, like, Baruka, and then send Baruka in the crit build, and then attack stance Baruka Selena, so that Selena has a guaranteed crit as well because of her personal skill. And that could be very funny, and I think that's more than Armor Knight does for you. Also, it lets you marry Baruka, which is always a good option, because Baruka's based. But yeah, I guess you could also do it with Camilla, if you want to marry your sister, but, like, ew. Yeah, Oni Savage just doesn't really do much for you. I've done a couple of playthroughs where I do Oni Corrin, because I think it's got some of the funniest animations in the game. But if you're just trying to do, like, what is the best class, it's pretty hard to deny that it's just ass. Blacksmith gets Yato access, so if you want to have the funniest animations against the goddamn Anakos orb, definitely recommend doing that. That is fun. He does the twirly whirly. Bam! Even like, because Salvage Blow, right, is the luck percent chance to get weapons, right? Not tomes, but iron weapons, or brass, because they're all the Hoshinan variants. So, like, if you want to, like, do some forges and stuff, there's that. But even there, like, just do Apothecary, Profiteer, right? Then you can buy the weapons to forge them. Then you don't have to worry about, like, oh, I have to get it against a bow unit in order to forge up a brass Yumi or whatever. Like, you just buy whatever you want. Oni Savage is just ass. Sky Knight. I think Sky Knight's actually a pretty good Corrin Heartseal option. It is the worst flying class. We'll get to the better one soon. But I think it's, like, solidly B tier. If you're doing male Corrin, I do wish I had two pegs. So I could do, like, male Corrin A, female Corrin B. Because the biggest thing that holds it back for female Corrin is Azura can give it to you, like, fucking immediately. Fast Friendship with Azura gives Sky Knight, because Songstress is not, like, a passable class. And so having early access to that, being able to just fly in Chapter 9, fly in Chapter 11, fly in Chapter 12, like, there's a lot of early game maps where flight is super useful, which is part of why I think having flight on your Corrin talent is worthwhile. I'm gonna elevate it to A, specifically because male Corrin, well, no, even, because the thing is, I was gonna say, because male Corrin appreciates it, but I don't think male Corrin does, because it's harder to get Wyvern as a male Corrin. You have to friendship Percy or marry Camilla or Baruka. So I think, honestly, male Corrin probably doesn't want Peg Rider. Darting Blow is really cool in that it is speed boosting player phase, comes on an unpromoted class, and it is a big part of what helps Corrin hit, like, the Fuga one-rounding thresholds and be just a really good early game, like Kinchi or Falco, which is cool. I think the biggest thing that holds Peg Rider back is that Wyvern Rider exists as a class, right? We should probably just, like, rearrange this, because it's kind of hard to talk about Peg Rider without also talking about Wyvern Rider. I think here. Because Wyvern Rider, Wyvern Rider is the best flying class in the game. Kinchi Knight and Wyvern Rider are sort of like tied, but you can get Kinchi Knight from Archer, right? Wyvern is pretty rare. Wyvern only comes from Camilla Baruka. Xander has it as like a Heart Seal option, and that's it. Oh, Percy. Wyvern is very rare. Wyvern, good stats. You can either go Wyvern Lord if you're physically oriented, or you can go Malignite, which is the flying magical class. And as a result of that, no matter who you're marrying, they usually appreciate Wyvern. Because even if you're marrying a magically oriented unit, even if you're doing a magical Corrin, getting Wyvern Rider to get Malignite is nice. It's useful. Because then you're a flying mage, and that's pretty baller. Flight is just at a premium in Rev, and the earlier you can get it, the better. Because while there are portions of the game where flight doesn't matter, I would say like chapter 15, 16, and then the late game, the very late game, once you go indoors to Anankos' palace, flight doesn't matter. In the early game, there's a lot of chapters where flight is a big deal. Basically, after chapter 8, everything from 9 onwards, like 9 through 14? Yeah, 9 through 14, basically every map, aside from 10, has like huge flyer dominance. And then once you enter Vala, it's like every other map is a super flyer map. Obviously, being weak to bows is a downside, and there are some maps where that's a big deal. Like, there's Kinchi Knights in the rotating bridge map. There's some Bow Knights in the clone map. And, like, that can be annoying. When you're on indoor maps, it's also really obnoxious because there's a lot of bow units on indoor maps. But I think that it is far and away worth that downside to be able to just trivialize a lot of the gimmicks that late game Rev does, or even early game Rev, and just be like, nah, I'm gonna fly over this river. I'm just gonna, like, travel in a way that you don't want me to travel. Yeah, Wyvern Rider, one of the better Heart Seal options. I would say the only downside is that you do have to wait until you can buy a Bronze Axe or Brass Club in order to reclass, so it's like a Chapter 8 reclass at minimum. But even then, like, you get Strength +2 and Lunge are just phenomenal class skills to get, too. Like, no matter what build your Corrin is going into, unless, I guess, if you're going a magical build, you don't want Strength Plus, but if you're going a magical build, Wyvern is good because then you're a Flying Mage, right? And then Lunge is always good. And Trample is good. Savage Blow. This is the route where Savage Blow actually matters because, like I said with Ninja, you're chipping people down. You're usually not one-rounding. And so sometimes, if you're two-rounding, Savage Blow having that AoE chip can change it from a two-round to a one-round. Like, if you kill someone with your Wyvern Rider, they proc a Savage Blow, and now someone else can kill a different unit who got Savage Blowed. And that's super useful. I know, like, the meme is that Wyvern is always the best class in Fire Emblem. And, like, I do think that Kinchi's better. I do think that, like, situationally, ninjas can be better. And Bow Knight situationally can be better. But Wyvern is just sort of a good, I turn my brain off, I have big numbers, I have flight, I have good weapon type moment. The other thing is that having to wait to reclass Wyvern is not necessarily bad, because the upside Pegasus has is like, oh, you just grab Azura's Bronze Lance and, like, go to town in Chapter 7. No, the fuck you don't. There's archers all over the shop. You will die. So it's just not good. It's just, like, yeah. Last couple of classes. These will probably be quick. Troubadour. You don't want Troubadour. Doesn't really offer anything. Like, if you're going magical Corrin, you don't want Corrin to be a support bot. I think Troubadour's actually probably worse than Knight. You also have, like, fast marriage with the servants if you really want Troubadour, but you don't. Like, what does it offer? Reclassing your Corrin to be staff locked is bad, which is also why Monk is bad. I'm putting Monk lower because female Corrin can fast friendship Sakura. So, like, it's even more accessible if you want to do funky Monk stuff. This is Monk and Shrine Maiden because they're functionally the same class. It gets a couple of rallies, but if you want to do the Rally Bot Corrin, just go female and fast friendship Sakura. I do think Rally Bot Corrin is good, but you don't go Monk talent for it. You don't go Shrine Maiden talent for it. And then there's Spear Fighter. I think Spear Fighter is a pretty bad class that the game kind of gaslights you into thinking is goated because Oboro starts in it. And Ryoma's son, whose name is escaping me right now, Shiro. Shiro and Oboro are both, like, units with big numbers, but their classes are not particularly good. I'm gonna put it in sort of Apothecary tier. Funny enough, these are Oboro's classes, but I think it gives you Basara access, which is cool for, like, Quixotic and stuff. And Spearmaster gets Lance Fair, but Lances are probably the worst weapon type in the game. Yeah, like, really the only tool that Lances have is, like, Water Wheel comes super early, but you won't have native Lance rank as Corrin. I guess you can, like, reclass and start building it in 8. I'm gonna put it above Apothecary, give it the edge for that reason. If you want to do, like, a Water Wheel Corrin build, which Water Wheel's not a great weapon, it's just that it comes early, right? If you want to do, like, Water Wheel Corrin, you can immediately reclass to Spear Fighter, start building Lance rank with Azura's Brass Lance, or Bronze Lance, and, like, that's something. Quixotic is cool, but basically anyone who wants to, like, end up in Basara as a final class has access to Diviner, so they can get, like, Tome Fair and Quixotic. Yeah, I think this is probably about right. It's not super accessible. Like, if you do want to do a Spear Fighter Corrin, especially for male Corrin, like, you kind of need it as your talent, because, like, what are we fucking waiting until Shiro shows up and then building a slow friendship with him? Get the fuck out of here. I mean, you could marry Oboro, and then, like, hey, give her Archer or something, but, I don't know, Oboro gets everything she wants through her own supports anyway. She can get Wyvern through supports, she can get Archer through supports, like, she's awesome. Yeah, this is the tier list. I'll let it sort of linger here for a little bit in case anyone wants to, observe. Bear in mind that this is not the order of, like, how good I think the classes themselves actually are. I mean, there are, you know, obviously, like I said, the better classes are ending up higher and the worst classes are ending up lower, but this is also factoring in things like how available the class is, how desirable just dipping in to get skills are. Like, it's a talent tier list, it's not a class tier list. But it's, you know, this is the list. Subscribe. Yeah. Thank you to Gulp Shido, Electric Giga, Erica Ford, YLO1, George Grenville the 7th PM, Jamie Collins, Arvis, Crispy Matthews, Floa Hay, I Like Rattata, Amy Hazel, Neas Costa, Faulty Videos, Lyra, Kyle Madison, Derek Williams, Anna Cabana, The Daily Fugle, Faye, Magic Bite, Thoughtful Insanity, Robin Goodfeller, Shinthia, Sardonic Muse, Dice Ike, Chris, Root Beer Pants, Queen Elysum, Aerith Emblem, Controlled Aegis, Roman Chromantic, Knick Knack Hammersmack, Lepton, Cabbage, SUP, Caius Cole, Bree, Punch Fighter Champion, Eggman, Maxine the Vampire Queen, Dragmac Lancer, Carrier has left, Jill, Angel Naps Caceres, Key the Iron Idol, Calamity Callie, a non-wanderer, a clever username of lies, Jackson McMahon, Saren Girlixie, Tailored Muffin, Rezi, Andu, Len, Gameboo, Carosa, Firant, Your Doctor, Frozen Helm, Patwit, Girl Boss, Lizard Bongwater, Christopher Bueno, Marin McLean, Jaden, Reflect, Dylan Solis, Forever Lucas, Guiji555, Smaz Ruby, Cycrom, Robin D, LNB, Hound Dogs, They Thom, Clan, and especially my Jakins, Thick Molder, Adele, Alexander Roper, Siggy, and Serial Bowl. This was just a quick project that I pumped out because I could make it quickly while working on larger videos that are taking much more time than I expected. And I let my patrons choose this topic, so if you want to participate in future instances of democracy, there is a link in the description to my Patreon, but please only donate if you can comfortably afford to do so. I don't want anyone going broke over Fire Emblem. Regardless of what you choose, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye!